Hey everybody, John Brown here with another board game review, and today I'll be doing Eminent Domain. Eminent Domain is a deck building game, and there's a lot of those out there, and it's a space themed one. So we're going to talk about how to play it, and also compare it to a few other deck building games, Race for the Galaxy, to which it shares a lot of similarities, and Core Worlds, which share some similarities but some differences too. Definitely similarities in theme and some of the mechanisms as far as deck build. So let's take a look at how to play the game and what I think about it. When we start the game, we're going to hand out these nice thick tiles actually that explain what a turn phase is, and then when we flip them over, one of them is going to say start player. So there's a nice way of choosing a start player in a game randomly instead of just saying do it randomly. I know Rodney Smith in his Christmas episode talked about how do you determine start player, and one of the things I actually did a video response to. One of the things I liked is when a game includes stuff like this, so I like it. Going to be randomly dealt one start planet, and they're also a tile, not a card, and we will see basically what it's going to take in order to control that planet. We'll see how that works in a little bit and what type of planet it is. When we take control of it, we'll flip it over. We also are going to have a deck of cards that no one player has. This is for everybody when they're trying to when they're surveying planets that they potentially are going to add to their empire. And then all these are regular cards, not cardboard pieces. And then we have a starting hand of cards. In this hand we're going to have one politics card, one warfare card, and then two of the rest of these. And then whenever we take a turn, we're going to follow what it says here. We, just like in most deck builders, are going to shuffle up our hand and we're going to draw 5 cards. That's going to be our hand limit usually during the game, although that can be changed. Now, the first thing I can do is take an action, and as we see, an action is an optional thing, and basically that's going to allow us to play any card in our hand and do what it says in the action section of each card. Now, the first card I'm going to talk about is the politics card. This is often going to get played in the first hand you have it, either your first or second turn, where you remove this card and then take any one of these cards into your hand. So basically, if there's a strategy you're going to be going for during the game, you're going to want more of those cards, and we'll see how this works in just a moment. Now, all of these cards for an action. For example, the survey allows us to draw 2 cards. So we basically, if we start with 5 cards, we play the survey, we now have 4, and then we draw 2 more. So we've basically gone to 6 cards as an option, potentially giving us more options. Warfare we use to either attack a planet or collect a fighter. Now the fighters in this game are going to look kind of familiar to anyone who has played Eclipse, because they are the same exact sort of pieces. But basically you can either collect fighters to eventually attack a planet, get one, or you can attack a planet if you have enough fighters. So for example, we see this starting planet here. It has a 2 with a colonized symbol, or a 2 with a fighter symbol. So I could play it to collect 1 fighter, or if I already had 2 fighters, I could launch an attack with my 2 fighters. I would get rid of those 2 fighters, and then I would take control over this planet and add it to my empire. The colonize action allows us to either take a colonized card from our, to take that colonized card from our hand and put it underneath of a planet. And actually we want to do it like this with the colonized symbol sticking up above. So we see we have this 2 here, and Cinder's going to come say hi. So if we can play it and to put a colonized card under a planet, or if we already had 2 of them under there, and see this planet takes 2 of each, as Cinder's taking a very close look at, and if we already had enough cards in there, we could, same thing, flip over the card, and then any colonized cards we had under it would go into our discard pile. Alright, we might need to take a break for a second and be right back. Okay, if we play a produce trade card as an action, we choose which function we're going to do. Either produce a resource on a planet that we control, or trade in a resource. So if we have a planet out there, for example, our starting planet, if we were to control it, has this little icon down here saying it can produce one of that resource. So then we would take a matching color token and put it onto that planet as an action, or we could trade that in for 1 point. Lastly, the research card, if we play it as an action, it allows us to thin our deck a little bit and basically remove 2 cards in our hand from the game. And we are allowed to remove the research card we just played as one of those cards. Now, one important thing to keep in mind is that action phase is optional. We don't have to do it. We do have to, however, do a roll. As we see, it's mandatory. And we choose any one of these cards from a stack, and then we go ahead and do the roll action of what that card says. So each one of these cards going to do different things. So a survey card, for example, is going to allow us to look at the planet deck, draw a certain number of cards from it. Okay, so if we took that as our roll, one thing we do is we play the card right away, we take it from the pile and play it out in front of us, and then we can add to it any number of cards from our hand that match it. So if I had another survey card, I could add it to my roll action to boost it. Now as a roll, it's going to allow us to look at a number of planets in the planet pile, -1 to the number of symbols we have in play. Now this is important because symbols can include the cards we have out, but also we might have planets in our empire that have symbols on them. So later in the game, if we've collected certain planets and flipped them over, they may add certain abilities. Like this is going to allow us to have one more card in our hand, but there's going to be plenty of different symbols. Like right here, here's a colonize symbol. Here is a produce symbol, a warfare symbol. So they're going to be different abilities. So here's a survey symbol. So if I controlled this planet, if I had gotten it through a survey and drawn it and then eventually taken it over, and this one obviously is easier to take over with colonization than warfare, but I eventually took it over. So now, and if I played these two cards as my action, or excuse me, as my roll, then I would actually have 3 survey symbols. Now usually, well, as you see, the ability says -1, so you would think I'd be allowed to draw 2 planet cards from the deck and decide which one I want to keep. So I would draw the top 2, and I can look at the front and the back, because it's going to be important. This will tell me what type of planet it is and when I need to take it over, but this will tell me, you know, and they also are worth a varying number of victory points at the end of the game. Both of these happen to be worth 3. They might produce a different number of resources or things like that. So then I can decide which one to keep. Now, however, certain actions, or excuse me, certain roles have a leader effect, and the leader is basically the person who does that role. So if it's my turn, I am the leader, and I can look at one additional card. So instead of having that -1 ability, if this was my role, I would get to look at 3 cards and choose the one I want. Now the reason that's important is whatever role I choose, not only am I adding that card to my deck, so it's now part of my discard pile, and when I go through my cards I'll draw it back into my hand, so it'll help make later survey actions more likely to be powerful, but any other player can they'll go around the table in turn order, and they can decide to follow me or dissent. If they follow me, they can play cards currently in their hand of the same type. So if they played 2 survey cards, now that -1 takes effect, they would take the basically 1 planet card off of it. So paying attention to what other people are doing and it is a big part of the game because you can follow their action. If they choose to dissent from what I'm doing, they draw 1 more card off of their deck. Quickly go through the other cards. The Warfare card allows us to collect a fighter per symbol we have. So we'll get 1 fighter for every planet we have with a symbol or card we've played with a symbol, including the card we just took and took that roll. Or we may attack a planet if we're the leader. So other players, as following this action, can go ahead and collect fighters for playing cards or for other symbols that they have out, but they do not have the option of attacking the planet on my turn. Colonize is similar, and the thing to keep in mind with these symbols is this one says +1 colony per symbol, and how that works is, let's say I was trying to colonize a planet and it took 5 colonization symbols to get it. If I already have 2 colonization symbols out in my tableau of things that I control, then it reduces the cost that it would take to colonize a planet, so I would need 3 symbols underneath the planet to be able to do so. And then as a leader, I may settle a planet instead. If we do a produce trade, then we can produce resources on planets per produce symbol we have available, the cards we played and other things, or we can trade per the trade symbols that we have available for 1 point each. So anytime we play this card, either as an action or a roll, we basically pick a side that we're going to be using. One to, produce things on our planets, and one to trade them in for victory points. The research card may be the most interesting card in the game because this allows us to purchase technology cards. So as long as we can meet the number of research symbols on the planets we control or whatever we have, and in the cards that we've played, we can get cards. Okay, let's take a look at some of the action cards that they show all of them on the back of the book. And they're going to show, for level 1 action cards, we're going to need to control one planet of a certain type. There are 3 types of planets, either fertile, advanced, or metallic. And as long as we have one planet of that type and 3 of the research symbols available to us, we can get one of these cards with a research roll. And all the level 1 cards are going to have similar, well, the exact same action we can play them for after we get them, but they're going to have different things that will boost us in our roll. Level 2 cards are going to have more advanced things and more variation in what they do. Over here we have level 3 cards. So level 2 cards are going to give us 2 victory points at the end of the game. Level 3 cards are going to give us 5 victory points. But as we see, Level 2 takes 2 planets of whatever type it shows on the card, and all of these are available to all players to look at any time. They're all available at any point. And then Level 3, we're going to have 3 planets of a certain type and 7 of the symbol showing. They're going to get us more points, and in general, they are more powerful cards. Some of the cards actually have a front and a back, too. You know, once we take a card, it's gone, so if we were to take Bureaucracy and somebody wanted Dissension, they're not going to have a chance to be able to get it. And, you know, I don't want to go into too much detail, but what I will say is that these cards are really where the game gets interesting. And when you get to some of the more powerful ones, there's all different kinds of things. Like, for example, this mobilization card is level 2. So if we play it as an action, we collect 2 fighters, and then we may attack after our roll phase this turn. Why is this so interesting? We don't even have to take a warfare roll. We can take some other roll, collect 2 fighters, maybe that gives us enough to attack, and then we can do it no matter what roll we take. So there's all different kinds of really powerful things, and you know, how much you want to focus on getting those technology cards, and not only are the higher value ones worth points, but they can set up really interesting combinations depending on which strategy you're going for. Alright, I said I'd compare this game to Core Worlds and Race for the Galaxy. And as a side note, if you want to play Race for the Galaxy, search online for either Race for the Galaxy AI. Somebody did a great program where you could play against a computer, and also there's a great website where you can play it, and also play seasons and a bunch of other games. It's a really fantastic website if you want to play board games online. Race for the Galaxy is a great game, but it's best 2-player in my opinion, and I love playing it as 2-player, but most of the time if I play 2-player it's with my son Ian, and we prefer playing Magic and Summoner War. We have enough 2-player games, I don't need another one. And when you play Race for the Galaxy, you know, it's simultaneous action selection, and it's kind of like the leader bonus too, but what other people pick you can do without the bonus all simultaneously. But 2-player you select 2 actions, and it's really interesting and intriguing, and it makes more than 2 players less intriguing in my opinion. Core Worlds, if you're into a deeper deck building game where, you know, there's a lot more strategic thinking, whatever. You have a player board, you got to keep track of your actions and your energy and produce energy. So if that's your sort of thing, I would suggest maybe checking out Core Worlds. I like it a lot, but it is a bit of multiplayer solitaire. The reason why this is the game I ended up purchasing, go check out Rodney Smith playing. I can't remember the guy he played against from the Secret Cabal, and they show kind of beginning, mid, and late game on Watch It Played on YouTube if you want to check that out. And you can see how different strategies and those technology cards in particular come into play. And you can pick one strategy and go with it, or go, you know, try to balance whatever. But that was a really interesting game where they both went to kind of extremes and how it worked out. Because this game allows that level of interactivity, and I'm sorry, Eliza's is going nuts, but allowing that level of interactivity to, you know, what other players are doing. It's not quite as interactive as the simultaneous action of Race for the Galaxy, but those technologies are really great, and I like that they're always available as opposed to hoping you can get the card in Race for the Galaxy. They're all great games, and I'd go with Race if you want a 2-player game. Primarily, I'd go with Core Worlds for a more in-depth game. But this game has a nice balance of depth and fun, and those technology cards, I wasn't really to display it here, but is what really make it interesting. Hey, and if you're checking me out on Board Game Geek, be sure to check out my YouTube channel. If I can keep that going, get some more subscribers, some more views, I'd like to eventually buy a camera. Right now I'm recording on my iPad, which means I can't review iPad board games, which I have quite a few of and I'd like to review. You know, it's not a big channel yet, but I'd like to see what we can do with it and maybe get some better program to edit and some technology to record, because I'm really enjoying doing this, and if you're enjoying it, be sure to let other people know, and hopefully we can grow the channel. Alright, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll talk to you guys again soon. Bye.